Hi, my name is Alex and this is Travel Titbits 60 and I'm in the city of Exeter, and I was starting off today in Northern Hay Gardens, and behind me you can see the old walls of Rougemont Castle. And fortifications have been important in Exeter, well, probably for 1,000 years. These fortifications were probably started off by the Normans, and it was built on ever since. And this is essentially the only part that still remains. So let's have a closer look at this old city. So the Romans were interested in Exeter in AD 55 when ships first came up the river Exe, and they called it Iso Dominorum. However, the Anglo-Saxons called it Eskenista. All names came from somewhere. And as I said, the Norman conquest was 1066, and the castle first made a name for itself in 1136. From 1213, weekly markets came to Exeter, and was one of the few cities in the southwest that had 3 markets a week. This was post 1281. There's a medieval bridge that we're going to take a look at. We've done quite a few programs about the railways, but the railways first came to Exeter in 1844. So let's take some shots around the city. These sets of walls and battlements are the most substantial walls remaining from medieval times, which formed part of the perimeter of the castle and of the medieval city. It's believed that the Roman walls followed a similar pattern. We're going to see some other clues as we walk around the city centre. The city centre is a mixture of old and new because of the bombing devastation during the Second World War. Next, let's have a quick look at the old and the new bus station. The old bus station and the new one behind it. The bus station is very light and airy inside. Now let's walk to our next point of interest, in the middle of a roundabout. So we're looking at the only remaining remnants of the bridge built and funded by cloth merchants, and was completed around the year 1200. If you look at some old paintings and drawings from the 18th, 19th century, you can see that that there was a row of houses built on the bridge. And in fact, the river is now out of sight because there are like 2 roundabouts here to take traffic over the Exe. And it's difficult to imagine, rows of houses on a narrow bridge like that. And not only that, there were 2 rows of houses plus a street down the middle. It reminds me a little of the history of the London Bridge, and basically everything depended on this westerly entrance. And would you believe it, the greatest complaint in the 13th and 14th century was congestion. Too many horses and carts. I just couldn't get up and down this bridge. at the same time, it must have been very interesting indeed, because I would imagine that not only did people live on the bridge, but they had their shop fronts, because let's face it, if everybody had to cross this bridge, you know, it's the best place to have a business. And yet today, people just wander by. I just witnessed some overseas tourists saying, oh, it's just an old bridge. But bridges and rivers and being near the sea, they were incredibly important, and it was difficult 800 years ago building bridges, and the only way they got funded was if the wealthy paid for them. No, it's absolutely fascinating, and I'm glad there is a part of this great bridge which plays such a big part in the history of Exeter. So the main river channel is now over there for flooding reasons, but we can actually walk across one of the most ancient bridges in England. And just imagine there being 2 rows of houses on each side, no doubt suspended, whilst all and sundry came up and down. There would have been pubs, merchants, particularly cloth merchants, we hope, since they funded this bridge. My goodness, it must have been the busiest place in Exeter. And this particular fortification was presumably one of the gates or checkpoints into the city itself. Sadly, a lot of buildings were destroyed during the Second World War. I'm not sure of the history of this part of Exeter in particular, but it's good that a part of it remains, and actually being able to walk in it and see what was here before. These columns presumably held up some of the properties. Well, undoubtedly they must have done. I don't think the technology was as advanced as, well, it was certainly very advanced in the sense that they were sturdy and would last 800 years, but not sturdy enough to, you know, for buildings to hang over the bridge successfully. So let's go and have a look at the cathedral. Now here's something interesting. What is this all about? Through this gate that once stood here, Prince William of Orange did march. He did have his army with him to ensure that his claim on the throne of England was ratified. Perhaps he is the source of the phrase, "you and whose army?" Well, he visited first Exeter Cathedral on his triumphant march to London. And now we shall walk up the steps to the cathedral. So here we are in the Cathedral Square with the cathedral in all its glory. Well, almost. It's having repairs and enhancements to make it look even more brilliant. And this was the first English church that Prince William of Orange came to on his triumphant march to become King of England in 1688. Sadly, due to bombing during the World War II, between 1940 and 1942, significant parts of Exeter city centre were destroyed, and sadly a lot of the medieval road layout went with it. So consequently I had a rather convoluted walk to reach here, but it's still a magnificent building. In more recent times, there was a hotel in the corner in the far distance, which sadly burnt down about 5 years ago. Gradually it's been seen to, but it's a very complex building because of its age, and anybody wanting to redevelop it has to, or will have to, because it's still in an unfinished state, will have to conserve it. If this building had been anywhere else, of course, it would have been flattened and had something modern put in its place a long time ago. But because of its place, preservation is rather important, and so it should be. So that was Travel Titbits 60, and a walk around the centre of Exeter on a really hot day. Where to next?